Hey everybody, welcome to Tempered Art Podcast. Got a guy on here with me today who's a musician, and he's also my nephew, so this is going to be fun. I get to pick on him on the podcast. So
Cool.
this is Scott Hall. Hey Scott, how you doing?
Good, good. How are you doing? It's awesome to finally do this, right? Keep
Yeah.
talking about it.
We've been trying to get here for a minute. Um, so you've been doing music for a while. You come from a pretty musical family. And
Yes.
we can get into more of that at another time, maybe. But so you've been writing and doing some production and engineering. You do a little bit of all of it, and you play as well. So what? Let's just start with kind of what inspired you to get into music. I know that it kind of runs in the family on both sides, but what inspired you to actually start writing and getting into that?
Initially kind of began with this band that I had in high school, like everyone has.
Right,
And it we started, talking about how if we wanted to get any gigs, we'd have to record it, at least some demos so we could, show people what we could do. And in the process of recording those demos, which were all covers. My brother, who was the bass player in the band, and I kind of took on the recording process because we couldn't
okay,
afford to go out and record anywhere. We just were like, all right, let's just record it in our garage with whatever gear we have lying around, whatever microphones, and we'll just learn it as we go.
mm-hmm.
And we fell in love with that process. So we we kind of and it's kind of for the better because as we started falling in love with this process of recording, the actual band started falling apart. And so when it ultimately did fall apart, it's fine because my brother and I had already found ourselves,
Right,
in a new circle, a new environment where we could continue pursuing this stuff. Um, so it kind of came with like the territory because we didn't have a band to record, we didn't have covers to record. So we were like, well, how are we going to practice? How are we going to get good at learning this new equipment, learning this new language? Because recording is fundamentally different from
right,
a live environment. Um, and so learning the differences between those things and how to, um, tricks for one that don't work, that don't translate into the other at all. Um, and so we kind of like there came like a moment of reckoning where we had to like acknowledge the fact that when it came to like vocals and the actual recording of music, we were going to have to write our own songs,
gotcha.
and one of us was going to have to sing them because we can't rely on that singer that quit our band.
Right.
We need to practice and we need to get good at recording. So I kind of volunteered. I was like, all right, I'll sing it, we'll write songs together, and then we'll and we'll cover those bases.
Yeah.
um and the first few attempts, it was kind of just this joint effort, trying to write not terrible songs so that we could, have something somewhat palatable to listen to while we were practicing. But then over time, I just found that although I love the recording and um, I, you can't really have one without the other. I started like, practicing the songwriting enough to I don't want to say get good at it, but to fall in love with that as well.
Right, right.
And the process of having a melody in your head or having a handful of words and running into the studio, picking up a guitar as fast as you can, grabbing
Mhm.
a mic and just trying to get it out as fast as possible so you don't forget it, and so you can build it out into a full song and really go crazy with it. Um, and I'll never forget the moment where the first time I heard like a song I wrote from the ground up, the lyrics, the melodies, everything translate from my head, and that's coming out of the speakers.
Yeah, yeah,
And I was like, this is crazy.
yeah.
Uh,
It's
and that's
cool.
it's such a rush.
Yeah.
And that moment convinced me that like this is what I love to do.
How did that work? What was that process like going from being band members to how did you figure out kind of the roles of the next step you took? Because you ended up recording and songwriting with other people and engineering for other people. How did that, between you and your brother, how did that wash out with who gets to do what and who is better at what or prefers what?
Yeah, it's kind of funny because when we would pawn ourselves out for like, hey, guitar player, bass player for hire, or even when if people came and saw our band, we bought like the sound system. We went half and half on everything.
Okay.
Um, just because at the end of the day, I knew that he wasn't gonna steal it from me, and I wasn't gonna steal it from
Right.
him, and
Right.
we knew each other. It's our stuff. We work well together. So it kind of it kind of fell into that, that kind of um, process that it translated perfectly into recording because um, you what we would always tell uh, different gigs or different groups who like, hey, I want a bass player. Well, you don't get one without the other, and we would say that to everyone.
Gotcha.
If you're gonna have me fill in for bass, well, you're gonna have another rhythm guitar player. He can stand in the back. He's in the back corner, but he's coming and he's bringing his guitar too.
Right. Right.
So um, that was
And
kind of the way we marketed ourselves.
did that end up ever opening up things you didn't expect?
Um, yeah. So for, the one thing that really did open up was we were playing for this one church, and one day the music coordinator at that church just got mad. She's like, why are you guys so good and only ever playing here? And we're like, it is what it is,
Yeah.
This is where people want us to play, and it's really the only place that we play consistently. And she kind of was just so frustrated that no one else was hearing our stuff or like giving us a chance. She contacted every like music coordinator that she knew and just like threw our names out there. And so that opened up a lot of like playing for different bands and for different churches, and ultimate like little stuff like fixing their sound systems or fixing their
Right.
whatever. um but
Which I have to say for the record, I've also told you guys that you're,
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yes,
I've I've
um
I've harassed you quite a bit on that. And
yes,
you're good. You're both very, very good. You're good players. You're great engineers. Um, and knowing you like I do and knowing your background, um, and having worked with other studios and other engineers, you're also really cool and really open to the artist's creative process and what their end goal is.
yeah.
Which is really important. And I know that there are a lot of engineers out there that are that way, but there are a lot who aren't as well.
Yeah.
And you guys' process has always been really cool.
Well, that was kind of the thing that we practiced at the most was how to talk to people, and not, I don't want to say convince them because that's not what we're trying to do, but
Right.
how to sell like the ultimate product that we can sell them.
Right.
Well, at the end of the day, you're paying me a certain amount of money um to come into my studio and to give, you're giving me your time, you're giving me your business, and I have you book a 4 hour session, I have 4 hours to convince you that your money's worth it.
Right. Well,
And
and
that
it's
was the
kind of,
mindset that
yeah.
we kind of adopted was um you know you although we're the engineer, we don't we're more reliant on you right now. You could
Right.
go to any studio, but
Right.
we need to convince you that this is the studio to come to.
Right. And that's what I was going to say is you're really selling yourself to them and themselves to them.
Yes, yes,
You're in here, you want us to do the work, we have to convince you that we can do it, but also we have to convince you that this is your creative process and it's worth being in here, and we're going to give you the product
exactly,
that you're looking for.
exactly.
And that's
And
probably the hardest part for a lot of artists.
it's a challenge, especially when you know me being me dabbling in the songwriting and my brother kind of dabbling in the production, and you can
Yeah.
get away with a little more production and when you're recording someone else's song.
Right. Right.
But like from a songwriting perspective, you have to kind of know when to back down when you're recording someone else, because you're like, at the end of the day, this isn't
Yeah.
my song.
Right. Right.
And And the only name I'm putting on this is is the name that says, "Hey, you recorded here." It
Right.
not written by me, not produced by me, just recorded by me.
Yeah.
Um, and and that's kind of a hurdle that I had to get over, because you're hearing a line and you're like, "Oh, well, we need to
Yeah.
rewrite it and we need to reference this other thing," and you know,
How did you decide, um, having done a little bit of production myself, how do you decide when to input an idea and when not to input an idea? I've been in a position where I'm pretty lucky and I've worked with people I've known. And so it's easier for me to say, hey, I'm hearing something, want to check it out. But if you're dealing with an artist that's coming in that you don't know anything about, and you hear something you think would really, really be good and that you think they would like, how do you approach that? And does it just depend on the personality that you're dealing with? How does that work for you?
I've noticed that also it depends on the person. And there's a lot of artists are just closed off to your ideas generally,
Yeah.
just because that's who they are, that's what they do. And that's fine. But if ever I hear something, I look at a couple of like in terms of reading the room and saying, do I need to say anything about this? I think to myself, how quickly can I get a basic version of this idea done, like produced, quickly fleshed
Ah,
out, so they can hear it?
interesting.
You, like if it's gonna take 2 hours for this little production ding dong right here, is it worth me bothering them now, or can they leave this? Can they leave the session on, or leave the studio? I'll make a note of it. I'll produce it while they're gone, and then I'll send them and be like, "Hey, listen to I'll give them the timestamp. What do you think of that?"
Yeah.
But in the moment, it comes down to how quickly can I build it so they can hear it.
And
Um,
that's the benefit of being able to play like you do and being a multi instrumentalist is you aren't just hearing it and trying to explain it. You can lay it down, which is that's a lot to be said for that.
and yeah, but then it comes down to like um um you'll say, and then it just comes down to like what they think, in
Right.
terms of like the situation. Maybe you're on a I found that I very rarely will be like, stop. I I hear something.
Right. Right.
Um, and there are a couple of those moments, and usually those only happen in a session in it, that everyone is completely invested. And I found that if there's a stop, we need to do this.
Yeah.
That is in a session where everyone is like on the edge of their seat from the moment you start recording that first time to the second they leave, just because the song is so good or the people are so easy to work with, and you're able to have that kind of, let's do this.
Yeah, for
But
sure.
a lot of the time I try to hold back as much as I can, just because if it ends up taking an hour to build out this idea, that at the end of the hour they're going to be like, I don't know, I'll think about it. Well, I just
Yeah.
killed an hour of their 4-hour session.
Yeah. Yeah.
um
Well, and like you were saying earlier, and I think that um, this can be true for a lot of artists, especially if they're new, is they don't realize that they're in the driver's seat when they come in the studio. They're
yes,
hiring you to do a job. And I think a
yes,
lot of artists go in and either they're overwhelmed or they just don't understand that process. And so, they feel like they're rushed or they feel like they don't really have any say. Um, so, yeah, being able to read it is huge. Have you ever had a band come in, you didn't know them, started working with them, and after they had worked with you a little bit, they said, "Hey, would you be interested in helping this creative process? We like what you're doing. We see what you're doing. Will help
yes,
us with our, you know, with the production or with, tweaking the songwriting or anything like that."
yes. There's this one artist based out of Chicago, Illinois, which I just left.
Yeah.
Uh, uh, Anthony, and he has a funny story of like how he started working with us, because he's completely remote, so he'll record his files and then send them to us. We'll mix it, we'll
Gotcha.
produce it, we'll build it. We'll send it back. But he didn't realize that I was a songwriter until maybe the second, like going on the second year we were working with him. and somehow, like through our different social media pages, he stumbled onto my stuff and he realized, oh, that's my engineer. That's the guy who's been mixing all my stuff.
Yeah.
Because I don't know why. Maybe I didn't say anything, or maybe it just never came up. And I just get a text from him randomly going, "Hey, get on. Hey, would you be interested in finishing writing the song that I'm working on?"
Oh, wow.
Sends it to me, and all that it is a verse, a chorus, and a basic instrumental. That's all that it is. And he says, "Finish it. Send it back to me." So I put whatever you want on it, build it out. He's like, "Look, and send it back." And I did. And we did a couple different songs like that, where he'll just basically say, "All right, you mind writing the second verse? You can sing the second verse, write it, send it to me, um, or what have you." Just because he's also just one of those musicians who, um, you could have the stop everything. Let's do this.
Yeah.
He's one of those guys where he's like, now he's interested. Now
Yeah.
he's like, really? What do you hear?
Yeah.
Um,
That's cool. Have you gotten other clients through him?
yes, yes,
It's
several.
amazing how you can have a reputation and word of mouth is so huge.
Well, the story of how we ended up recording his stuff is actually very funny. Um, in the early days of the recording studio, one of our only clients was this rapper, and he's a fairly decent rapper. But he one day he's like, "All right, I'm moving to Texas, and and maybe we'll be able to work remote." We're like, "Okay, that's cool." He moves to Texas. A year goes by, we don't hear um from him at all. And we're pretty sure he has found another producer, engineer, whatever. He's
Sure.
moved on. We're moving on with our whole thing. One day we get an email from this guy. We didn't know who he was. Basically said, "Hey, saw your ad on Instagram for some songs. Because we did like a sale every year where it's like a Christmas sale and a New Year's sale.
Mm.
It'll be like submit each person submit a song. First place winner will get a song of their choice, mixed, mastered, and all their stamps and stuff for free. Second place will get that, whatever, right?" And he's like, "Hey, saw that you were doing this ad. How do I submit a song?" I'm like, "Okay, um, send it to this email, whatever." And he did, and it's very good. We're like, "Wow, this guy's good." Um, and we uh time goes on, and after everyone submits their songs, we listen to we grade it, and this guy wins first place. And as we're working with him recording it, he's like, "Yeah, I stumbled on your page. One buddy of mine mentioned you guys and said you guys do good work. So I figured I'd take part in this, little thing you got going on." And we're like, "Yeah, absolutely." And we send his stuff back, and we get an email from him going, "What are you guys doing? I've sent my songs to so many studios and so many different engineers, and you're the only people that when I get the files back, it sounds like this would just come on the radio."
And you guys do, that's very true for everything that you've done. I have to say, yeah,
I appreciate that.
you're
Mostly we
you're,
just
you're
kind of
very
fake it.
good at getting that level of quality.
I appreciate that. It's a lot of work, and we're like, "Yeah, and then he said, 'All right, you're my guys now.
Right.
I'm gonna send you, let's work some stuff out, whatever." And we get a call like a year later from that rapper we first recorded, and he's like, you know, "I lost my phone, whatever.
Mm.
I've been dealing with these horrible engineers out here in Texas. I'm, miss you guys. Like, mind if I send you some stuff? Let's get this remote thing going." And then one day he's like, "Yeah, I heard my friend stuff, and he said you guys mixed it. It was amazing." And we're like, "Yeah."
That's cool.
And turns out that this guy who we just recorded was, our guy in Chicago who was the roommate of that first rapper at the
Funny.
college in Norfolk.
That's funny.
And and so we were and so it was just kind of like a small world moment.
Yeah.
And we we kept working with him with this initial rapper from Norfolk. And then one day he's like, "Hey, I just want to let you guys know I bought plane tickets from Texas, so I'm coming out for a week, to record in your studio that whole week."
Wow. That's cool.
And that was kind of the moment that we realized, like, well, it was kind of humbling moment because we're like, this guy's flying from Texas
Yeah.
to record in the studio.
Yeah.
And that was just a cool summer, just kind of like working on everything together, and really kind of building the studio out, was probably like the biggest, um maybe not the peak, but probably, you know building to the peak of
Yeah.
our studio time.
Yeah. So moving forward quite a bit here. um, well, first, what's the name of your studio so that people can find it if they're out there looking? And I know
That's
that I know that
question.
I know there's some other things that we'll get into here in a second, but if somebody were to want to look up stuff that you've done, where would they look?
um where they would look now, they would probably look on my SoundCloud page. There soon will be a Spotify and an iTunes page and all that stuff.
Right, right.
um but for now, everything's on my SoundCloud. Just Scott Hall. I think it's still under Norfolk, Virginia.
Okay.
And most people can find my stuff there. But um when the album comes out that I'm working on right now, you'll be able to probably find everything, Spotify, iTunes, whatever, um, through the name of the album.
Gotcha. Okay.
Uh,
Now, so kind of where I was heading with that is there's three boys in your family and you're all in the arts
yes.
and you are all now in college and you're going in different directions.
Yes.
And so a lot of this has either really slowed down or been put on pause or has gone in a different direction. Um, the direction that you went is you joined the Navy. And
Mhm.
so you're in process on that stuff. So how has that changed? Because you're still writing,
Yes.
and you're still doing those kinds of things. How has that process changed? And have your goals as a musician changed with that?
Yeah. So the process has changed fundamentally. Um, and I'll say before, the last 3 months being in basic training, not being, not having any access to like any kind of recording,
Yeah,
not even able to like get on my phone to like record a little quick idea. um that you know that was that was the part that kind of tested my like songwriting. Like, if I put words down on a piece of paper, and at the end of these 3 months, will I remember how it goes, or
right.
will I like, um and so, through that, now being in A school, finishing up my training phase, um, it's just, the process of just, if I have an idea, it's a very simple setup now. I don't have like all the little tricks and
Yeah,
um, uh, little pieces of equipment that make my life easy. It's me, a guitar, and an SM58,
yeah,
and I have to mostly rely on, if I send these to my brother in West Virginia, will he be able to get, because he's got all the gear. Will he'll
yeah.
mix it, and he'll, refine it down to a, point that's good enough and send it back to me. Um, so that the way I write songs is fundamentally different. Um, but the goals are still the same.
Okay.
Um, Still working on this album. uh should making good progress, definitely making good progress with it. And um the best way to say it is there's not a reality that I can even imagine where music doesn't play a factor. There will always be some form of, a studio setup so I can always record. I'll always record. I will always write. I will always be doing something in the music, that relates to music.
Right, right.
Um, it's just my m- not even my access, but my the time. Um, because when I get out of my training phase and I go to my first command, um, it's actually kind of it's actually going to kind of be strange because my command will allow me, almost the same amount of time to record and write as I had before I joined the Navy.
Oh, that's great.
So it, it's kind of going to be strange because there will come a day where that that is no longer the case. I kind of got lucky
Yeah.
with my first command in that
Yeah.
aspect. Just because of the type of command that it is. Um, but I'm still writing, still very active in terms of my music. I still play um every day. I write every day, and I think the most important part is I still, I'm listening to music all the time, just
Right.
always absorbing almost everything that I come in contact with and filing it away.
Yeah. Yeah. The stuff that you guys do has always been really cool, really fun to listen to. Your processes are really nice. Um, it's not surprising that people love working with you. And your songwriting has always been cool, catchy tunes,
I appreciate
radio
it.
radio friendly stuff. Um, and so it's really good to know that you're still able to do that process because you
Yeah,
love it and you're good at it. So it's great that you still have access to that and that's not gone away. Even though it's changed, it's not disappeared.
yeah,
Um,
and it's a very slimmed down process.
sure.
It's me, a two-channel interface, an SM58, and a guitar,
Yeah.
and a laptop.
Yeah. And
So
but it's still functional, which is fantastic.
exactly, exactly,
So good, always good talking to you. And,
absolutely.
and talking.